at the end of the conversation, the flag bearer's choice was made known to and he
Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, being retained as John Mahama's running mate, started flying around weeks ago. Although the party was tight-lipped about her being selected for the second time to partner John Mahama, activities on the day of the official announcement all pointed to her. The party formally informed the public about its decision to select Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman after a closed-door meeting at its headquarters in Accra.
The Council of Elders meeting went very well, followed by the NEC meeting, at which, at the end of the conversation, the flag bearer's choice was made known to the national executives of the party. And he communicated to us that he was very much satisfied with the running mate that he went into battle with in the year 2020. And therefore, the nomination, the name for the running mate, as you know already, is Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. She will be the running mate for the NDC come December 7, 2024. Now, what we want to let you know is that Prof. Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman is a distinguished academic and leader, renowned for her dedication in education and in public service. She has served as Minister for Education and also was the first female Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast. She has distinguished herself as a trailblazer for women in leadership across the country. Her nomination, therefore, underscores our party's unwavering commitment to inclusivity and empowerment of women in leadership.
Former Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra, and former campaign manager of the NDC, Professor Joshua Alabi, expressed confidence in the party's choice and believes she will help deliver victory for the National Democratic Congress in December.
It's the best choice for this election. There was a market scheme, it was very tight, and she emerged the best. And for us, we've got what you wanted, and what is left for us to do now is to focus on our campaign and move straight to work. The market scheme, like the General Secretary said, integrity, ability to handle issues in the absence of the President.
And of course, that we're bringing you because of the discourse we're about to have. We're going to be focusing now on the running mate saga, the political parties, and what they ought to be focusing on, what we as a people as well should be expecting as far as those dynamics are concerned. Joining us for a conversation on this all-important subject, especially as now the NDC, or the former president, John Dramani Mahama, has confirmed Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman as the person he wants to go alongside him one more time as they contest for the highest offices of the land. Well, joining us for a discussion, we have Dr. Kobi Mensah. He is a political marketer at the University of Ghana Business School. Professor Kobi Mensah, my apologies. And then there's also Dr. John Osai-Kwapong. I actually switched the two of you there. I did a switcheroo. Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, he is a CDD fellow. So, Prof and Doc, good morning to you.
Good morning, Benjamin.
Prof, you've played hide and seek with me for a while now. I'm exposing you live on air. The last time I called, I didn't hear back from you. But it's good to have you join the conversation this morning.
Thank you. Good to see you. And hello to John. Good to see you, John.
Good morning to you too, Prof. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start from the very start. John Dramani Mahama last week re-endorsed, if you like, Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman as his running mate. As far as the MPP is concerned, we do not know yet who will get the nod. Names have been bandied about from, unfortunately, the man who has met his demise now, and we still mourn him, John Kuma. But we've also had the energy minister, Matthew Opoku Prempeh, the Education Minister, Yawase Duchum, Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu, and all of those in there. But when you look at where we are now, for starters, where we are now, and the situation where the two major political parties are now telling us whom they are going to be running with, what picture does that paint for you? I'll start with you, Professor Mensah.
Thank you. I think that possibly the political parties must look for someone who is not overly partisan, because we're in a very dire position. I mean, nobody could actually say that we're in a good state. And so you want someone who can really articulate the national issue, or who can be very much concerned about the state of play currently. We're talking about high proportions of unemployment. There are quite a lot of young people who have actually sort of left in terms of their belief in this country. They've left that particular position. They don't believe in the country anymore. They think that their future actually lies elsewhere. And so we see droves of people, actually, leaving the country. Now, obviously, you want somebody who could, articulate why young people should believe in the country again. So you need almost like a statesman or a stateswoman, a state person, who can actually have that particular, rhetoric, that passion to actually speak to young people. There are quite a diverse issues. We don't have only, economic issues. We have quite a lot of other issues that are very important. Obviously, the economic issue always sort of highlights or, headline the campaign for obvious reasons. But there are people who also have quite, other important issues that we haven't been able to bring to the front burner of the political campaign, such as people who are differently able. They have a lot of challenges. This country had never been fair to such people, such as women. Up to now, we're talking about empowerment. We're talking about women empowerment, but we haven't put concrete, actions in place to address that. Now, you need someone who can actually articulate passionately some of these issues that I've talked about. So the country needs people who are not overly partisan, who are very much, country-centric, who are very much passionate about other issues that are confronting people practically, so that they could actually have faith in this country again. So I think that these are what the political parties must be looking at.
For you, Dr. Kwapong, what are the fundamentals when you look at the political parties and where we are in terms of the running mate situation?
Well, political parties are in it to win, fundamentally election. And so I'm sure that one of the things they would be looking at is the political dividends that they believe the person would bring to the ticket. Can that running mate who is being chosen to partner the presidential candidate help deliver political dividends for that candidate? So that's one fundamental thing that I believe the parties look at, the presidential candidate looks at, as he, looks at, a slate of candidates, and then eventually ends up with one particular person as the running mate that I believe can deliver those political dividends. But beyond that, the presidential candidate also then looks at, should I win this election? Is this the person that I believe can partner me and help me govern the country and deliver on all the many promises of various policies and programs that I will be, our party will be rolling out as the election season goes on, and see whether the person also, quote unquote, in the eyes of Ghanaians, in the eyes of the party, you can look at the person and say, yes, this person, quote unquote, can do the job, of a vice president. They have to also look at their working dynamics and working relationships. But for me, the other important thing about this choice is the fact that our political parties over the years, have talked about gender parity, their commitment to, opening up the political space to women, etc., etc. And I know that every so often we do get, a number of women who seek elected positions. But I think The other way to ensure that gender parity is to be intentional about some of these appointed roles. So sometimes I do say that, when they make the commitment that I would appoint X number, in a cabinet or to ministerial positions, given what we know about the challenges that women face in the electoral space when they contest for elected positions, the other way to do it, to seek that or to get that gender parity, is how you use the appointment power, or how you use selections such as who becomes, a running mate as another way of doing it. And so for me, this is also one of the things that I've been reflecting on, which is the intentionality with which a particular candidate is trying to achieve gender parity as we talk about, women in our political and governance spaces.
Let's look at what essentially is expected of a running mate. And I pose that question, starting with you. It's to both of you, but I'll start with Prof. I pose that question because, especially with the Bawumia factor, what was expected of a running mate has seemed somewhat different from what maybe we expected of Aka, what we expected of Aliu Mahama, what we expected of Atta Mills at a point, then Aliu Mahama, then John Dramani Mahama himself. The running mate situation, who becomes a vice president, the expectations, what really are they?
Okay, well, just like we have in marriage, running mates are actually companionship, not competition. You want to make sure that you have somebody who can complement you, i.e. fill your gaps. So you're saying that if you need counsel, who can give you that particular wise counsel that indeed you could actually sort of use to solve some of the many problems. So it is not only about connecting stakeholders in the campaign, but as John said, if you are not in the country, or you're not governing, you're not within the jurisdiction at a particular point, or even if you are not in a position to govern, do you have a stable hand, a very solid mental fortitude, the judgment, the character to actually govern the country? So you have someone who is actually playing that role. So you look at your characteristics and you look at how to plug the kind of gaps that you find within your characteristics. Now you need somebody who actually would appeal to certain voter blocks. Now, I've always said that, look, in the elections, just like we have in a marriage, there are some issues that your wife can actually speak better to your children than you would do because, obviously, of the particular issue and their characteristics, all right? So there are certain voter blocks that perhaps you would have a certain character in a candidate that could speak passionately to them and could be much more convincing than the flag bearer themselves. There are certain situations that perhaps someone with a different character can actually solve better. If you look at the Jerry Rawlings and Atta Mills, both of them of blessed memory, they had two completely different characteristics. And so when situations come, you could deploy perhaps Atta Mills, for example. Other situations Jerry Rawlings can actually handle better because they had two completely different characteristics. And there are situations that require, different characteristics to handle that. If you look at stakeholder groups, all right, there are some stakeholder groups that are better handled by a different character, different personality than other character, other personality. So there are situations, stakeholders, communication issues. There is a certain counsel that a candidate needs. The candidate needs certain reassurances, etc. So all these issues come to play when you're selecting your running mate. And I'm sure that the candidates themselves, when making decisions about these things, this structured approach of selecting who best fits, I think actually comes into memory. So certainly you have to look at all that. And I have said that in the campaign, although the economic issues had been predominant, all right, there are some other issues that are quite important in people's lives. And we haven't been able to make salient, we haven't been able to prime those issues. Characteristics themselves could prime issues depending on the person that you're bringing onto the campaign trail. So certainly, these are some of the issues that you want to consider, when you are considering your running mate here.
For you, Dr. Kwapong, what do you think the real dynamics are? I believe they've shifted over time. I don't know whether you agree, but what would be the expectations of such a candidate at this point in time?
And to add to what Professor Kobi-Mensah just said, you're right that if I think back to 92, 96, even 2000, I don't recall the role of the running mate being, quote unquote, a really high stakes issue or being, a really crucial part of our conversation. It always, for me, appeared that, around 2000, the key driver for the political parties was always maintaining that regional balance. So if their presidential candidate was from the southern part of the country, then they picked a running mate from the northern part of the country and vice versa. But I think after the 2012 election petition and Dr. Bawumia being the main witness for the NPP, sort of started giving us this different view of, the role of the running mate, right? The person who can actually step in and make a case for the party's interest on very important issues. Yes, in that case, it was the election petition. But I believe that 2016 really became the game changer for the role of the running mate. Because I mean, if you look at the NPP campaign in 2016, for example, I'm sure most people will agree that Dr. Bawumia was the face and voice of that campaign, making a strong case of, the economic case against, the John Mahama administration and making that same economic case for the Nana Addo administration, right? And the reason why they should be voted in power. And so I think right at that point, we started looking at the vice president or the running mate differently, right? Can they make a case for why their party should be elected? Can they articulate the economic issues? If you recall, in 2016, all of a sudden, we started hearing a lot more about the role of the vice president on the economic management team and the touting of Dr. Bawumia's economic credentials as being the right person to partner. So some of that, I think, changed the way we started looking at the running mate. But just like Professor Kobi-Mensah said, is a merit of all of those things. Ultimately, I believe that the candidate looks at who can best partner me to win this election, taking into consideration all of those things, who can help me articulate the issues, who can help me go into certain places to make the case for our political party. I believe are all the things that the parties look at. The candidate himself looks at and says, I want person A as opposed to I want person B.
I'll come back to you, Professor Kobi-Mensah. Now let's look at the choice, because the NDC has its choice now. Sewn up, done and dusted. Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman is going to be another ticket for those two. If you had to assess her, or dissect her, so to speak, looking at her strengths, weaknesses, pros, cons, fortes, foibles, what would you say? The package, Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. That's for you, Professor Kobi-Mensah. I'll start with you.
Okay, well, firstly, if you want to understand, what the package is, I think you have to, first of all, break it down. That is the personality down. You can look at her track record. Obviously, she had been a vice, chancellor. She had been a minister.
First female vice chancellor of a public institution in Ghana.
Absolutely. And then, of course, she had been a minister of education. So you can look at the track record, what is in store in terms of her competences. Her performances at the university, at the ministry, can actually be one. Now, two, you can look at her personality. Obviously, take away the demographics. but you're talking about the temperament. You're talking about, the what we call the hue. All right, how does she really accept things? How does she appear to be, listening to people? I mean, how does she gauge people? How does she, tolerate people, etc. All right. So you're looking at the characteristics in terms of her temperament, in terms of her composure, in terms of her, dominance, etc. You're looking at that. Of course, you're also looking at her networks. All right. Having been, an academic, I am sure that you could actually plot the stakeholders within her network. You can talk about not only university level, but you're talking about academics in all round. You're talking about training colleges. You're talking about even the senior high schools. You're talking about the junior high schools. You're talking about the females, all right? And then you're talking about people who champion women empowerment issues, diversity issues, etc. You can actually look at that. And then, of course, you can look at her demographics, as in the geographic space. You're talking about.
Hello, Prof.
For example, how does she appear? And then, of course, having been in politics, I'm sure that for now, you can talk about her experiences, because in the first place, when she was selected, you probably could actually say that the experience, although she'd been in government, but hadn't been at a frontline elected office,
She may have been green as far as the political space was concerned.
Absolutely. Just like when Bawumia came onto the fore in 2008, for example. But now you could say that she had actually been at the forefront of the political, system. So these things are the ones that can help you gauge, what she brings to the package. If you evaluate it and it's positive, of course, you can talk about her contribution. If you evaluate that and it's negative, of course, it talks about her, negative equity onto the campaign.
If you were to do the same assessment, weigh Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman on the scales of her merits, what would they be? And demerits as well, Dr. Kwapo.
On her merits, I look at her academic profile and credentials.
Right.
I find them very impressive. I look at the leadership roles she's played, again, in academia, and the fact that she's also played a leadership role in our education sector, the work that she's done post-leaving government work. I also look at her, I look at her personality. She doesn't strike me as an overly partisan person. And one of the things that I appreciate about people in the political spaces, I have a very conciliatory nature towards politics. And so I always say that I appreciate candidates who don't approach politics with a very adversarial, that sort of adversarial.
Zero-sum game.
Yes, so that for me is one of the things that I appreciate about her personality and her approach to politics. I think what may have been a challenge, but I believe she's had 4 years to work on it, was that in 2020, I don't think she was really at the forefront, or at least deeply involved in NDC partisan politics. I think the late selection of her in 2020 also presented a challenge. But I believe that between 2020 and now, 4 years has passed, she's had enough time to build inroads into the party, to build even a much stronger relationship with former President John Mahama. She's become more involved in the party's politics, which tells me that the acceptance is much deeper, broader, and wider now. And so for me, when I put it all together, I think I sincerely believe that former president made a good choice in terms of who he wants to partner him going into the election.
All right. Hold for me, gentlemen. There are other pertinent questions I want to raise, but let me usher in Professor Ransford Gyampo. He is with the University of Ghana, and he joins the conversation as well. He's a political scientist. Prof, good morning.
Morning. It's been a while.
It has. It's really good to have you join the conversation this morning. I hope you've been well. Hello, Prof.
Yes, hello. Good
yes,
morning.
I was asking, I hope you've been well. It doesn't appear Prof can hear me very well, I don't think, or maybe...
Hello?
Yes, Prof. Otemenka.
I can hear you.
Okay. So we've started the conversation and we're focusing on the running mate situation, but we're focusing now on Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman and what she brings to the table. What would you say, from where I sit, I see her to be a person in the mold of former President, may his soul rest in peace, John Evans Atta Mills, her demeanor, her positioning in politics. But that failed to work and worked at different times. Some would say he was too soft, he was too this and that. Though he was a running mate and later he became the substantive. That was the tail of the tape for him. Do you see the same thing as far as Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman is concerned?
Well, I do not necessarily agree with that view. I think we should just look at the reasoning behind her choice as running mate to President Mahama. Number one, purely from a principled position, I believe that the woman was selected to represent a certain minority, the need to address a problem that confronts a group. Essentially, she came in as a solution that helps to address the marginalization of women, at top echelons of decision making, and also sometimes, or most of the times, at even lower echelons of decision making. Now, the quest to ensure the effective participation of women at this stage of power has not been fully achieved. So, women, the history of Ghana's Fourth Republic shows that we have not had a woman at the presidency, running for the presidency before. Or we haven't had a woman who has been elected president before. We haven't had a woman who has been elected vice president before. And the party, or I believe President Mahama's view, was to ensure that at least you bring the quest for women's empowerment and their effective and substantive participation in decision-making.
But very quickly, Prof, very quickly, pardon the interjection, but that wagon, hasn't it long set off? Because we had a woman Speaker of Parliament, Bamfuado. We've had a woman act as IGP at a point. We've had women from Justice Wood serving as Supreme Court Chief Justice. In fact, we have the third one currently in the person of Justice Tokonu, Gertrude Tokonu, among others. Hasn't that bandwagon, hasn't it set off a long time ago?
Even though the doctrine of separation of powers and checks and balances places, for instance, executive, the legislative and judicial arm of government at par with each other, in terms of who really wields a lot of influence, is at the level of the presidency. And so this is the first time you have a flag bearer contemplating the idea of bringing women to the level of the presidency. And I think it's something that is commendable. That idea was not achieved in the last election. And so if it hasn't been achieved, and you still have the chance to ensure that it is achieved, then purely from a principled position, I believe it makes sense for the same ticket to be.
Hello, Prof. Are you done with that point?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you done with that point?
Yes, I'm done with that point.
So on the back of what you said, I'm going to fast forward a bit. I'll come back much later, but I'm going to fast forward a bit. Are you then saying, because the NDC, for example, has its own dynamics, John Dramani Mahama, if the NDC wins, cannot go for another term. This will be his final term if the NDC wins. Would you then?
My brother.
No. I'm making a point. Would you then say that, for example, with the dynamics, people have said a certain caliber of running mate should be picked so that that person can continue from there? Do you believe Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman can do that come 2028 if the NDC wins the coming elections?
Okay, you see, I'm sorry to say this, but you see, I wanted you to let me finish. I would have addressed all the subsequent issues, including this one that you are raising. But I want to flow systematically. I would have got it there. So let me continue, but I will address this particular question that you have raised. Yes, in a GP. So let me flow with my two main reasons, and then I'll come there. So the second reason is that, look, if you feel that President Mahama in 2020 election, and you feel that Nana Opoku-Agyeman to partner him in that election, and then we are saying some experiences have been garnered following the 2020 elections, and we are saying that the 2020 elections outcome was a victory for the NDC, although it was with a taste of defeat, then practically it is sensible for you to continue with that ticket, because if you look at the vote margin of the NDC in 2016 elections compared to the vote that the party garnered in 2020, the party's vote appreciated, and like I said, the outcome of the 2020 election was a victory with a taste of defeat for the NDC. For the MPP, it was a defeat with a taste of defeat. Okay, so that positive outcome of the election is such that you cannot then want to change a ticket that brought that kind of positivity in terms of outcome to that election. So then it makes sense for them to continue. Now to your point, the issue that you raised, I am thinking that the idea of bringing on board Nana Opoku-Agyeman is to also protect the peace and the peace of the party, and to create a certain field that would be even for all those who would want to take over or jostle for power, take over from President Mahama as leader of Black Belt of the party. The idea is that you do not want a situation where you pick a relatively younger and ambitious person as running mate, so that when you do that, it creates or it becomes a dress rehearsal for that person to want to take over from President Mahama. If you do that, you create an uneven playing field for the others who also want to jostle for that same position. So it makes sense to bring somebody who would comfortably retire with President Mahama, and then the field becomes even for all who want to contest to lead the party as flag bearer in future. So I think the idea is to go away in future in peace with the running mate, so that it becomes even for all those who want to contest. If you pick any of those who are angling to take over from President Mahama as running mate, then you give that person an unnecessary head start over the other contenders. And I tell you that then the party, the Mahama would leave the party rancorous and acrimoniously, because people would fight and fight. People would be trying to fight to impress, people would be trying to fight to undermine that particular running mate, and that will not augur well for the party's own peace and then its performance in government. So I think that it was a wise step to pick President Nana Opoku-Agyeman, so that President Mahama would exit with her, and then create the even playing field for all others who want to come on board to fight or to contest for the flag bearership or the leadership of the party.
Right. These are questions I'm going to pose to all three of you, Prof, Doc, and then Professor Jampo as well. But because I know you have to go, Professor Jampo, I'm going to run the two by you quickly, and then when you're gone, I'll run it by the other guests. So, one, does Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman carry the same burden that, for example, Dr. Bawumia carried and still carries? If she becomes the vice president, the whole bit about being a member, whatever the convention is, or chairing the economic management team, will still be there. But will she be held to that same fire as Dr. Bawumia is being held to? Or will she be expected to contribute more towards the area of education? That's question number one. And question number two, on a scale of 1 to 10, at this time, how do you feel the partnership with John Mahama, with Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman? How strong is it on a scale of 1 to 10? Those two quick questions, and then you can take leave of us, Prof. Professor
Well, we
Dampo.
are saying, will she continue to play the role as chair of the economic management team and all that? The Constitution does not say that a vice president should be the chair of the economic management team.
That's why I said convention, not.
Well, it is our own evolution, and it is conventions take a long time to evolve. We can scrap that, we can discontinue that. But even if you want he is able to do that, you are just a chair, and an effective and a competent chair knows how to steer up the affairs of a team, even if he or she does not have the requisite capabilities or skills or knowledge in that area. I mean, I share so many things. I sit as chair of among of a committee of intellectuals, and sometimes I do not even fully have a first grasp over the issues that are being discussed. But as chair, you know how to surround yourself with people who have the technical know-how. You do not need any quality apart from being a lawyer to become a minister. You do not need any qualification in any area except the ministry. That's how come Kwame Adufo was for once was adjudged the best minister under Kufuor as when he was a minister of defense. Yet he's not a soldier. He wasn't a soldier. He's a medical doctor. And so we have examples of people chairing the economic management team, and they were not economists themselves. So I think that it is your capacity to be able to surround yourself with the right caliber of people and your ability to be fair to superior knowledge and wisdom, and your willingness to be cool about the area that will make you succeed in handling that particular portfolio as a chair of the economic management team. So if you want to do it, she's a professor. You'll be able to do it. Number two, in terms of how
strong is the partnership on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think if you ask me, given the fact that she was asked to partner Mahama, and Mahama has again decided to continue on that tangent, I think if they weren't there, Mahama will not bring her on board to partner her. So I'll score them around 8 over 10.
8 over 10?
Yes.
All right. Professor Jampo, thank you so much for joining the conversation. We're grateful for your time. He is a political scientist at the University of Ghana. We also have joining the conversation Haruna Mohammed. He's Deputy General Secretary of the NPP. Haruna, good morning. Haruna, can you hear me? Good morning.
Yeah, I can hear you. Good morning.
I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well.
All right. I'll come to you in a second because I want us to focus. When I bring you in, I want you to give your verdict on the Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman before we segue into the MPP. So please just hold for me. Professor Kwabena, those two questions to you and to Dr. Kwapong as well. Prof, are you ready with your take?
Yeah, of course I am.
Right.
I always tell people that, if you look at a president, every president has a particular area of discipline. And currently, our president is a lawyer. Everybody knows that. But of course, our president is not a financial person. Our president is not a medical doctor. Our president is not. But the president is supposed to be jack of all the facets of the economy, isn't it? So if you look at leadership is not about your technical competencies in terms of the area that you have. But leadership is about mobilization. Leadership is about organization. Leadership is about coordination. Leadership is about communication. Have you got the character to do these things that I've highlighted? All right. And as Professor Jampo said, if you have to defer decisions to people, if you have to actually bring in people, have you got that sense of competence to be doing that? I quite remember during former President Kufuor's time when he was campaigning, and NDC was actually saying that he was a lawyer, but he hadn't been in a court before, etc. What he said was his role as a presidential candidate, and when he becomes a president, is to bring in the talents that are needed to govern the country. But he's not supposed to be doing all those things that people think that you have to do. No. And of course, that's what leadership is about. You are supposed to assemble a team to work. And so EMT, of course, we see the model which had been said before about how Jerry Rawlings actually handled that. Apparently, I'm not sure in terms of the veracity of it, but of course, people have said that that there was somebody else who was the head of the EMT at the time. I mean, during the early days of it. All right. If that is the case, why must we say that by all means she needs to chair it when there are frameworks of that? And as Professor Jampo said, when you are chairing it, it doesn't mean that you have to have the competencies in that particular area. You could actually be chair because you have the ability to identify the right talent, etc., and to coordinate the affairs of that community.
So sort of like the vice president chairing the police council. He may not necessarily be an expert on security matters.
Yeah, but that is perhaps constitutional, all right? That's constitutional. But the EMT is not something that is in the Constitution. Now, when you talk about the relationship between her and then, of course, the flag bearer, I think that having identified her as the right person for the ticket once more can tell you about the chemistry between the two of them, all right? Can tell you about the relationship. I think that they've had time together. Obviously, he appointed her as the Minister of Education at the time. So it means that he had confidence in her, then chose her as a flag bearer. So it means that he's satisfied with her performance as a minister. He's satisfied with her competencies and, of course, the relationship between the two of them, which is the chemistry between the two of them.
Right.
So I think if you cannot give her 10 over 10, I think anything between 8 and 9, I think will be a fair.
So what is your score? Professor Jampo says 8. What is your score? Give me a precise score.
I think that I will give her between 8 and 9 as well.
8 and 9. Did you say 8 and 9 or 8 over 10?
Between 8 and 9. So that you can say 8.5.
8.5. All right. Let me also welcome aboard Mustafa Gbande. He is Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. He joins the conversation as well. Mustafa, good morning. Mr. Gbande, good morning. Do we have Mustafa Gbande?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Mustafa, thank you very much for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Just hold briefly. Your opposite number, Haruna Mohammed, is also on the line. Don't go anywhere. I want this to be a bit of an interesting discussion on this, but just hold for me. Dr. Kwapong, so quickly on those 2 points as well. I want to clear that hurdle before we move forward. Dr. Kwapong, those two questions. Does she have the same burden as a Bawumia? Or will she, for example, be expected to focus more on the areas where she has expertise? And then, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate the partnership. Quickly on that, if you can.
Right. So on the first question, again, 2016, for a long time, nobody even heard of the EMT, and it wasn't really a central part of our conversations in election years. Then 2016 changed that dynamic. Subsequent to 2016, now there's also, quote unquote, sort of a new emerging narrative that their role is more advisory. They don't have decision-making power, etc., etc. When all is said and done, I don't believe she carries the same burden. The president, should the NDC win, President John Mahama may decide that she continues to play a role on the EMT or not. But either way, she would get to define the kind of vice president that she wants to be if they win. The president would deploy her based on, her strengths. And I don't think she carries the same burden as Dr. Bawumia carried, or at least the way it has been framed would not become a legacy burden that she would have to carry.
How strong is the attack team?
Please say that again.
How strong is the attack team?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give them a 9 out of 10 only because perfection doesn't keep people humble. Otherwise, I would have scored them a 10. All
right. So the partnership of Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman and John Dramani Mahama. Professor Jampo says 8 over 10. Kobe Mensah says 8.5 over 10. Dr. Kwapon says he would have given a 10, but perfection only makes people complacent. So 9 over 10. If you strike the average, you would be looking at very high marks. Let me now bring in Haruna Mohammed, and only because Haruna joined the conversation first before Mustafa Agbande, so I have to be fair. Haruna Mohammed, Deputy General Secretary of the NPP. From where you sit, the running mate saga, we'll get into the NPP, but the NDC has made a statement. They are retaining Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. And you hear the political marketers, the political scientists, the CDD fellows giving them such high scores. What is your reaction when you look at Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman?
Thank you very much. I don't know the parameters that they are using to score Professor Nana.
But did you listen to them when they were making their points? Because they laid out their parameters.
Definitely the scores were, the parameters were not spelled out, which cannot even stand the test of time. Professor Jampo knows that if you are going to score somebody, you must score the person based on a skill, and the parameters must be known and can be tested. However, they may go ahead to score her based on their knowledge of the person, but they have not had the opportunity to test those variables that would have been something that everybody can see or can also test it, also verify those judgments. But be as it may, they have the democratic right to be able to assess the person. But for us in the MPP, I would like to tell you that it is the same old wine in an old bottle, not even a new bottle. This is the same pear that we did in the 2020 election. And I can tell you, she was contesting for presidential elections. Nana Danko Akufo-Addo had 19 constituencies in her own region, except that we had 10 constituencies in her own region. So she should have brought something on board on the ND. And it's on record. The professors will tell you, it's on record. No candidate has ever won a second term by over 500,000 votes in this country, except Gerald time. So it is on record that the NPP doesn't share this pair at all. Remember, this is a pair that has never seen any publicity in terms of the presidential contest. President Mahama's wife was more publicized than the running mate of the NDC. And for us, something that we have beaten before, it is something that we are very confident that this is not a match at all. It is not a match to the NPP.
If you had to, looking at the high scores that have been given here, if you had to give a score of their partnership, and of course you have to make these assessments from your side to see how strong your opponents are, especially as you don't have a running mate yet. How would you score them? 8.5, 8, 9. What would your score be?
You will get 44.4%.
So basically, no, I'm talking of on a scale of 1 to 10.
So if you also integrate it,
4.4
out of 100, so you'll be able to assess the person.
So 4.4 out of 10.
100, you get 4.4.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Let me bring in Mustafa Agbande, Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. What does it mean? Because I hear some people in the Ashanti region, some members of your party are dissatisfied with the choice of Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. What is your reaction to that? Do you think she's the best candidate? And what would be your score? Hello, Mustafa.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, thank you very much, and a good morning to my colleagues on the other side.
Mustafa, please speak up a little for me. Speak up just a little.
Can you hear me?
Better now.
Yeah, so thank you, and good morning to my colleagues on the other side.
Right.
So my first reaction would be that for us in the NDC, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, a woman of substance. We all know her. We know her pedigree. She's a teacher, a lecturer, and a professor. That in itself brings to bear her expertise and gravitas when it comes to understanding our social needs and social problems. The real economy is when the ordinary Ghanaian can go to bed and confidently say that he has a president or he has a vice president who is taking or looking out for their interests. Currently, as we stand, it's on record that we have a vice president who have brought nothing but a reproach of a record that is shameful, that for the first time in the history of our country, when a vice president speaks and you go to do a research on it, you found out that it is a lie. Majority of the things the vice president puts out are not true, they are lies, and that is what the Ghanaian people are worried about. So we still in a candidate who, when she says that I will keep the public purse, you and I, as voters, as taxpayers, will not go looking for the police to go and collect the public purse. Because as we speak today, His Excellency President Akufo-Addo and his Vice President have stolen the public purse away. Ghanaians are more worried about that than the issue of, certificates. The MPP sold to Ghanaians titles, slogans, and certificates. You remember how they touted Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia? It ended up to all be a lie. It was a sham. It was a bad good sold to the people of Ghana. So we try to pin in somebody who Ghanaians can trust. At the end of the day, the person is honest enough to tell Ghanaians where the situation is. This current regime is not even ready to be honest about the circumstances we find ourselves as a country. That is a real economic issue. When everything that affects yourself, everything that affects our children, everything that affects our country is being turned upside down into concocted lies and untruth, then the Ghanaians is worried. So for us in the NDC, we look out for somebody with credibility, somebody with integrity, somebody with outstanding educational record that understands the problem of the ordinary person, the elite, and the high class. And that is what Professor Nana Opoku-Agyeman comes on board with. Now, for those in Ashanti region who you say that are not satisfied, I believe that they are party members. They must not all be satisfied with the choice of the president, because where His Excellency President Mahama sees, not all of us can see. It is our duty as a party to reach out to our grassroots folks and speak to them, which we will be doing. Don't also forget that we had Dr. Kobra-Duffuor, who also wanted to be a running mate, and he's from Ashanti region. So ordinarily, they would have wished that their father, their brother, had emerged as running mate. Of course, Dr. Kobra-Duffuor is an outstanding gentleman, experienced, and we all know him, we know his record. But for President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, he ran one of the solid banks in this country. They collapsed the bank with Ken Ofori-Atta only to preserve the year. And so beyond that, I think that Professor Najee's candidature brings a big relief to the people of Ghana.
Okay, so give us your score. I think we've got the thrust.
A candidate that brings trust, that brings honesty. Currently, as we speak, I'm wondering what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia will be saying that Ghanaians will believe him.
Right.
And it is not supposed to be so. It's customary of our country where a vice president speaks and you are worried as to whether it is true or it is not true. For me, it's brought deficiency of integrity to the seat of vice president, and that is what we should be looking at.
I think we've got the thrust of your message. On a scale of 1 to 10, it may be biased because that's where you're coming from, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this partnership? Mahama, Jane.
I'll give it 10 over 10 because for me, what I'm looking at is that it brings trust to the table of governance. It brings credibility to the table of governance. See, if you are lied to about your economy, it kills you than anything else. Businesses will collapse.
All right.
People will die.
All right. Okay.
We will lose life because the vice president and the president is not honest. It's dangerous than any other thing.
Okay.
I'll give that 10 over 10.
All right, 10 over 10. Haruna, let me come back to you. You see, one of the popular catchphrases of the MPP, especially at the start from 2016 into 2017 and everything, we have the men, and by extension, the women. Haruna, Have you run out of the men and women now on the back of what we've seen and some people being ministers, for example, staying ad nauseum and while there were lots of calls? And now it appears you can't even get a running mate. What's the situation there?
That is not true. If you reverse your mind back, John Mahama was elected somewhere in May 2023. He just did his running mate election.
I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to go there because your constitution says something, and there had to be an extension for Dr. Bawumia to do this.
Yes, and that extension still is far better than what John Mahama has just done. I am telling you that John Mahama was elected in May 2023, and then he is doing his selection of the running mate now. Look at His Excellency the Vice President.
But they stuck within the parameters of their constitution. They stuck within the parameters. Your constitution says something.
The parameters of the constitution. You also look at the selection period within John Mahama did his own. And the constitution of our party was exercised at National Council to give extension of time for Dr. Bawumia to do so. So if you want to pair the two heads together, look at the time period that they have used to execute and show their vision to the people of Ghana. So definitely this is not going to be a win or lose against Dr. Bawumia. It is rather going to strengthen the decision-making strength of His Excellency the Vice President. Upon being elected, he has been able to come to tell the people of Ghana his vision. He has not told the people of Ghana that he wants a honeymoon to go and sleep. He has come out to set up his manifesto team. He has also come out to set up his campaign team. It tells you that he is very ready. In a very not near future now, we will be outdooring the running mate of our party. And it's going to be very, very smooth for all of us. This is a candidate that has said that he's going to be a man of his own. And he's going to do so not through any white man who will be advising him. And I also want to correct one impression. When the professors were talking about the economic management team, remember, John Mahama has never been even a member of the economic management team under Professor Mills.
What do you mean? Because we've seen, for example, that document where when he became vice president, he stated categorically that he was a member.
Dr. Gobin Nankani was the chairman of the economic advisory committee.
Are you saying John Mahama was not a member of the team?
He was not a member of the economic management team. There was no economic management team under Professor Mills. There was economic advisory committee under Professor Mills. And John Mahama
hold for me. Is it in the nomenclature? Is it the name? Because whether you call it what you are calling it or you call it the economic management team, the value is the same.
Even if it is in any nomenclature, I am telling you that John Mahama was not a member. Dr. Gordon Nankani was the chairman of the Economic Advisory Committee under Professor Mills. Then we had Tobe Afede, Mr. Emmanuel Ablo, Mr. K.Y. Amwa, Dr. Kadman Atamils, Professor K.N. Afo, Mr. Fred Ohini Kena, Mr. Park Kwesi Emita Ata, Mr. Ismail Janssen, Mr. Joe Hyde. These were members of the Economic Advisory Committee.
One quick question. Clarify this for me.
If we are doing an analysis to show how a vice president could contribute, I am just showing that the vice president doesn't necessarily have to be in the economic management team. Or if his competence cannot exercise over an economic management exercise, the president has the right to appoint other people who have the competence house to be able to handle that. So it is very clear that John Mahama was not a member of the economic.
Just clarify this for me. I like your positioning because this whole bit about an axe hanging over your head. Not everybody is an economist, and not everybody. People come with different shades. But the point,
even when you are put in a position, you have technocrats that are going to exercise or help you in the implementation of this particular.
I get that.
But I just wanted to correct the impression that John Mahama has never been a member of the economic management and non-existent economic management team under Professor Mills.
Let me just clarify this.
Economic Advisory Committee.
Haruna, because of time, let's do this. I mean, when I have it, let's do this so that we can all flow. The role those people played versus the role of a so-called economic management team, were they similar? Were they the same?
Yeah, once it is about economy, you know, the essence of it is that it is not a constitutional body. Whether it is Economic Advisory Committee, whether it is Economic Management Team, it is not a constitutional body. It is an advisory body to the president. And that is why the president chooses who goes into that. And you see, this particular team has a very big role of advice in terms of how the economy grows. So it has impact. It has impact on the implementation of economic policies within the governance system.
Now, in terms of the NPP, when can we expect a running mate? May? And even if it's April, is that not going to be too late? Because some have said already you are facing myriad problems as a party, the economy, so many things going on. And you're now going to market this other person. What's your reaction?
I want to correct this. We are not facing any problem. The MPP as a party is not facing any problem.
No, I didn't suggest you were facing. I suggested
that we are facing mirage of problems.
Oh, but the economy is it not a problem?
The economy has had a turnaround. It has had a turnaround.
Oh, it has.
It's going on. Yes.
I see.
What was the inflation 1 year ago? What is the inflation now? What is the growth rate?
What is the month-on-month inflation? Do you know?
I am telling you that you yourself, inflation was around 60-something%.
Do you know the month-on-month inflation?
I am saying that inflation, and you agree that inflation 1 year ago is not the same inflation this time around.
Right.
You know it.
Right.
You know it. So it is that
Haruna, do you know that month-on-month inflation is what actually determines what is happening now, not year-on-year inflation?
What is the month-on-month inflation? What is the month-on-month inflation that you are talking about? And as 1 year ago, what was the month-on-month inflation? At least let's help to get the people know that there is some level of appreciation within the running of the economy. It is not the same. There has been a change.
Okay. All right. So May, is it May that we can expect a running mate?
When the time is right, at the right time, His Excellency the Vice President, the flag bearer of our party, and the leader will announce the running mate.
Mustafa, do you have any quick reactions on that? And then I'll take quick reactions from my other two guests, and we shall wrap the conversation. Quick reactions?
The reaction is that it's unfortunate that my brother, as a doctorate degree holder,
Mustafa, no, let's not do that.
I know. So let's deal with it.
No. Don't refer to someone as someone who has a PhD and then try and denigrate, because then what you're saying is that the person is bereft of whatever. Don't do that, please.
No. That's not where I'm going to. No, at all. But let's leave that conversation. I think that the MPP has a typical problem. And the problem is that they lack what it takes to be transparent about situation that confronts our country. And that is a bigger problem. He is talking to a bigger audience. At the time when businesses are collapsing, at the time when Ghanaians are suffering, they say that they are performing. Well, that is for your audience to judge.
Right.
But I do know that in as much as His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, as president or as vice president, being a chairman of economic management team or not being chairman of economic management team, today, when you compare the average performance of our economy 7 years ago, and at the time His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was a vice president, the ordinary Ghanaian would tell you that it was better. So there was a team. This is a President Akufo-Addo who told Ghanaians that he had a man. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was touted as an economic whiskey.
Okay.
He was sold to Ghanaians as an individual who can do the magic.
Right.
Today, they are running away from that same group they have sold to us.
Okay.
And turning around to say that, okay, the reason why we have failed is that John Dramani Mahama was never a member of economic management team, but the government performed at the time. Businesses were starving at the time.
Mustafa, I get your point.
At the time.
I get your point.
We are worse off. We are in hell as a country, and yet they don't see anything wrong with that.
Thank you, Mustafa. I just have to be fair and take parting comments, 1 minute each from Dr. Osai Kwapong and Professor Kobi Mensah. Interestingly, I listened to a member of parliament from the NDC and say that whichever person came into power would face a power crisis, energy crisis in 2025. And recently we saw that Ghana versus Ethiopia match where our lights went off at that match. They couldn't play for a while. What would be your parting comments, Professor Kobi-Mensah, starting with you, 1 minute, and then Dr. Osai-Kwapong, 1 minute.
Well, thank you. I think that there are rituals in every endeavor. I mean, if you look at the political system, the political parties have certain things that as political watchers or as experts in the field would expect. I mean, I was surprised to have heard Dr. Bawumia's Constitution Committee and campaign team without having a vice president. That is not to say that he's supposed to. But the convention is that usually you name your running mate because the running mate comes with their team and you combine the team that you have with that running mate team as well. Now, the symbolism is that there is a certain gap in terms of, that teamwork. All right, that's the symbolism. I mean, you can check, and I'm sure if you ask any political scientist, you will tell you the right thing is that usually you have the running mates and their team, and so I'm surprised that up to now that hasn't come. But then you have a Constitution Committee set up, you have a campaign team set up. That's the kind of symbols that it sends out, or the sign that it sends out that there's a certain misnomer within the political campaign team of Dr. Bawumia. But other than that, I think, of course, he needs all the time to actually look for.
Prof, thank you so much. Dr. Kwapong, final word in less than one, if you can do it.
Yes. The NDC has finalized its team. It's former President John Mahama and Prof. And we wait to see who Vice President Dr. Bawumia would pick. And for me, I keep looking forward to an exciting political season.
Thank you very much. Those we had joining the conversation today, we had Professor Kobi-Mensah of the University of Ghana Business School. We also had Dr. John Osai-Kwapong. He's a CDD fellow. Then we had Haruna Mohammed, Deputy General Secretary of the MPP, and Mustafa Gbande, Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. Now, let's cross over and get some of the reactions in recent days from Cape Coast as far as the nomination, the selection of Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman to John Mahama. These were the reactions.
Elizabeth Mensah. Mama no alba was so fi commander. Menyu aje papa. Masu me fi commander. Nka ye sugar fatty, commander ye sugar fatty ya. Ye mrente ma na nkatesi ma wonye adwuma ye. Nti so oba, ombra mbo commander sugar fatty. Na nkatesi ma na mrente ma commander sugar commander wonye adwuma ye. Nti oba igomufo ya ho hina na ombra mbo he ne ye bre. 1000 ye nyu abre papa. Ye diama ba.
Well, that's it. Later on, we'll bring you some more of those reflections. But stay with us. Up next, we're talking about that dialogue under the theme, enforcing cybersecurity protocols, protecting the citizens. That conversation is coming up next with Sweetie Abochi. Do stay.